Good morning, dear students of class 8. Welcome to the English online learning class. Today we are going to further continue with the lesson The Great Stone Face Part 2. So, a brief recap of what we did in Part 1. Ernest, as told by his mother, that a man resembling the Great Stone Face would come to the valley, as was told by Ernest's grandmother to his mother. And it was a prophecy that a man resembling the great stone face would come to the valley, and people of the valley strongly believed. One such man did appear, Mr. Gathergold. But to Ernest it seemed that he did not resemble the great stone face. As years went by, Mr. Gathergold became old and died. And another such man came to the valley, Blood and Thunder he was known as. He was a commander, but when Ernest looked at this man, he also did not resemble the great stone face. Now let us read further. The years hurried on and brought white hairs upon the head of Ernest. So Ernest had now become an old man and made wrinkles across his face, forehead, and furrows in his cheek. He was an old man, but not in vain had he grown old. More numerous than the white hairs on his head were the wise thoughts in his mind, and Ernest had ceased to be obscure, unsought for, undesired, had come the fame which so many seek. He had become famous beyond the limits of the valley. College professors and even the active men of cities came from far to see and converse with Ernest, and he received them with gentle sincerity and spoke freely with them of whatever came uppermost, or lay deepest in his heart or their own. While they talked together, his face would brighten unawares and shine upon them as with a mild evening light. So Ernest had become old. Ernest was now very famous for his wisdom, and people from all over the place came to the valley just to meet and talk to Ernest because of his deep knowledge. While Ernest had been growing old, God had granted a new poet to this earth. He too was a native of the valley, but had spent the greater part of his life in distant cities, pouring out his sweet music everywhere. Neither was the great stone face forgotten, for the poet had celebrated it in a poem. The songs of the poet found their way to Ernest. He read them after his customary toil, seated on the bench before his cottage door. As he read, he lifted his eyes to the mountain. So there came to this valley a poet, and he had written about the great stone face in his poems, and people still believed about the prophecy. And even Ernest read his poems. "O great stone face," he said, "is not this man worthy to be your likeness?" So Ernest said that it seems that this poet was the man who resembled the great stone face, and he asked the great stone face for the answer. The face seemed to smile, but did not answer. Now it happened that the poet, though he lived so far away, had not just heard of Ernest, but had thought much about his character and wished to meet this man whose wisdom walked hand in hand with the noble simplicity of his life. So even the poet had heard about Ernest. He decided to come to the valley to meet Ernest. One summer day, therefore, he arrived at Ernest's door, where he found the good old man holding a book in his hand, which he read and then, with a finger between the leaves, looked lovingly at the great stone face. "Good evening," said the poet. "Can you give a traveller a night shelter?" So he asked for the night shelter. "Gladly," answered Ernest, and then he added, smiling, "I think I never saw the great stone face look so hospitably at a stranger." The poet sat down beside him, and he and Ernest talked together. Never before had the poet talked with a man like Ernest, so wise and gentle and kind. Ernest, on the other hand, was moved by the living images flung out of the poet's mind. So when the two talked to each other, they both were admiring each other. As Ernest listened to the poet, he imagined that the great stone face was bending forward to listen too. He gazed into the poet's eyes. "Who are you, my gifted guest?" he asked. The poet laid his finger on the book that Ernest had been reading. "You have read these poems," said he. "You know me, and then for I wrote them." Again and again Ernest examined the poet's features. He turned towards the great stone face, then back. He shook his head and sighed. "Why are you sad?" inquired the poet. So uh, Ernest was looking at the poet, thinking that he was a great stone face. And the poet said, "Why do you look sad?" "Because," replied Ernest, "all through life I have awaited the fulfillment of a prophecy, and when I read these poems I hoped that it might be fulfilled in you." "You hoped?" answered the poet, faintly smiling, "to find in me the likeness of the great stone face? I am not worthy to be its likeness." So the poet said that I am not worthy to be like the great stone face. "And why not?" asked Ernest. He pointed to the book. "Are not those thoughts worthy?" he said. "If you have written the poems, then you have very noble thoughts. You can hear in them the distant voice of a heavenly song. But my life, dear Ernest, has not corresponded with my thoughts. I have had grand dreams, but they had only been dreams. Sometimes I lack faith in my own thoughts. Why then, pure seeker of the good and true, should you hope to find me in the face of the mountain?" He said that my thoughts are just thoughts, they are not reality. The poet spoke sadly, and his eyes were wet with tears. So too were those of Ernest. At the hour of sunset, as had long been his custom, Ernest was to speak to a group of neighbors in open air. Together he and the poet went to the meeting place, arm in arm, for there could be seen the great stone face. So Ernest used to address people in the evening, so both went to address to the people. Ernest threw a look of familiar kindness around upon his audience. He began to speak to the people what was in his heart and mind. His words had the power because they agreed with his thoughts, and his thoughts had reality and depth because they harmonized with life which had always been lived. It was not mere breath that the preacher uttered, they were words of life. A life of good deeds and selfless love was melted into them. The poet, as he listened, felt that the life and character of Ernest were nobler strain of poetry than he had ever written. His eyes filled with tears, and he said to himself that never was there so worthy a sage as that mild, sweet, thoughtful face, with a glory of white hair diffused about him. So the poet was finding the resemblance of the great stone face in Ernest, because Ernest's thoughts matched with his deeds. At the distance, but clearly to be seen high up in the golden light of the setting sun, appeared the great stone face, with white mists around it, like the white hairs around the brow of Ernest. At that moment Ernest's face took an expression so grand that the poet was moved to throw up his arms and shout, "Behold, behold! Ernest is himself the likeness of the great stone face." Now, when he looked at him closely, Ernest appeared to be the great stone face. Then all the people looked and saw that what the poet said was true. The prophecy was fulfilled. But Ernest, having finished what he had to say, took up the poet's arm, walked slowly homeward, still hoping that some wiser and better man than himself would by and by appear bearing resemblance to the great stone face. But Ernest was not ready to believe. He still hoped for the wise man resembling the great stone face to come to the valley. So, we are going to stop here. We'll work on the question answers in the next class. Thank you. Have